In our lecture we are going to study about the homeostasis. Okay, so homeostasis, it's important for our life. If we will go for the definition of the homeostasis, okay, so what homeostasis is, it's a property of the human biological system where what happens that the self-regulating process, it tends to maintain the balance for the survival. So in short we can say that there is a balance for survival. So balance for survival, that will be called as the homeostasis. And this regulation, this takes place in a well-defined internal environment. Okay. So this balance for the survival, it takes place in an internal environment, and this whole process is called as the homeostasis. So we can say that homeostasis means maintenance of the internal environment if there are changes in the external environment, or if there are changes in the internal environment as well. Okay, so that is called as the homeostasis. So body will try to balance itself if there is internal change or there is an external change. So that process is called as homeostasis. Now I will try to explain it by a flow diagram. For example, I am writing it here. For example, normally there will be a balance of everything inside the body. For example, it will be like this. So here it's in a balanced form. Now if there will be any change, for example, this is the change. Now this goes like this. There is a change. Okay, we can say that this imbalance is little. I can say that here, the red one going down. So the imbalance here is little, and this side imbalance is too much. Imbalance, it's too much. Okay, imbalance of the anything, I can write it as a step number 1. For example, this is the step number 1. So in step number 1 there will be a stimulus. Means stimulus, it produces change in the variable, in any of the variable. So there is change in variable. Okay, now this stimulus, this is detected by a receptor. So I will draw it here, step number 2. So this imbalance, okay, or this change will be detected by the receptor. So I will write step number 2 here, not here, I will write it here. So change detected by a receptor. Change will be detected by receptor. Okay, so there was first everything was in the balance. Okay, now stimulus changes the variable. Because of the stimulus, it produces change in the variable. Now that change is detected by the receptor. For example, this here is a receptor. Okay, so this change is detected by the receptor. Okay, now what will happen in the step 3rd? I will write it, 3rd step here. Okay, input. So information will be sent to control center. Information sent. Information will be sent where? It will be sent to the control center. Then we will give the examples also. So example is this input is sent to the control center. Now what happens in the control center? What will control center do? I will write it 4th here. Okay, there will be output. First there was input was change. Okay, now what is output? Information sent to efferent pathway. Now information sent to information will be sent to effector now, which will act. Okay, and then there will be step 5. I will write it here, response of effector. Okay, response of effector, it feeds back to influence magnitude and returns to stimulus. Okay, response of the effector. Okay, so these are the steps which occur during the homeostasis. Okay, so for example, I will give the example here. I will try to explain this thing by a simple example. Okay, so what actually happens in the homeostasis? First we will try to explain this. So if there was any imbalance in a normal function of the body, that is then this is given as a stimulus. Okay, this stimulus, this change is detected by the receptor gives the information to the control center acts and gives output to effector, then effector changes that variable. So that is called as the homeostasis. Now I will explain this diagram in a simple way. For example, here the same thing happens. Okay, now for example, here in our body, glucose level, for example, glucose level in our sugar is increasing. Okay, increase in the glucose sugar or blood sugar, increase in the blood sugar levels. So for example, there is increase in the blood sugar. Okay, what will happen? Receptors will detect the change. So here there is a receptor, it will detect the change. Okay, so pancreatic cells, they will detect rising blood glucose levels after eating. Okay, so generally after eating, what happens? When we eat, after some time there will be increase in the blood sugar. Okay, and then what happens that as a receptor, pancreatic cells, they detect the rising blood glucose levels after eating. Okay, then this receptor will send, it will send info to the control center. Okay, here it is a control center. So what will happen in the control center? Those cells, they will assess the situation, means there will be pancreas synthesis and release insulin. Okay, for example, pancreas, its synthesis and releases insulin. Okay, then this will be sent to the effector, and in effector, what will be the effector? Liver and muscles, they respond to the insulin and increase the glucose uptake. Okay, some glucose gets converted into, for example, glycogen, which lowers the blood glucose and restoring the balance. So that is one of the example of the homeostasis. So I will again explain what homeostasis is. Okay, so this was the general mechanism of the homeostasis, how homeostasis occurs in our body. Now I have given you one example that when we eat, after eating, there will be increase in the blood sugar levels. Okay, after we eat, so that food will be broken down, and after this it will be absorbed into the bloodstream. So in bloodstream there will be increase in the blood sugar levels. So when there is increase in the blood sugar levels, so receptors, they will detect the change, means pancreatic cells will detect rising blood glucose levels after the eating. Okay, then these receptors, they will send info to the control. Okay, here this is the control center. Okay, so what the cells will do? Cells will assess the situation. Okay, that means that pancreas will synthesize and release the insulin into the bloodstream. So insulin will be released into the bloodstream. Okay, then control signals the effector. Here is a control center, it signals the effector. Okay, in effector, liver and muscles mainly. Okay, liver and muscle cells, they will respond to insulin, they will increase the glucose uptake. Okay, here the liver and muscles, okay, they will increase the glucose uptake, and some glucose, it gets converted into the glycogen and lowering the blood glucose and restoring the balance. So then the effector responds. Okay, effector will respond to restore the balance. So that whole process is called as the homeostasis. So in our body, various variables are there, various changes are there. Those changes will be detected by the receptors, and then either negative feedback mechanism will act or positive feedback mechanism will act. Okay, so if one thing increases, body will try to decrease it. If anything decreases, body will try to increase it. So this whole process is called as the homeostasis. Okay, so if I will explain this thing in detail, after eating there is increase in the blood sugar. Okay, if I will try to explain this in detail, so I will try to explain this in detail. For example, this is a blood vessel. Okay, so this here is a blood vessel, for example. Okay, and here there are the cells. This is a cell, this is also a cell, and this is a cell. So these are the cells. Okay, and here there is, for example, the presence of the pancreas. For example, this is the pancreas. Okay, so this here is pancreas. Okay, and I will try to explain what normally happens, that after eating what will happen normally. Okay, when we eat the food. And yeah, one more thing, here there is a stomach, for example. This is stomach. Okay, we eat the food. After eating, that will be absorbed. There will be absorption, there will be complete digestion, that then there will be absorption, so it will be converted into glucose. So this glucose will be present in the bloodstream. And for example, this is the glucose here, and we have the blood. This is the blood. Okay, and this is the glucose. So after digestion, the food is digested. After digestion, it will be absorbed in the bloodstream in the form of the glucose. Okay, and we have red blood cells also here. These are the red blood cells. Okay, so, and in the normal conditions, what happens, that there is pancreas also. Okay, pancreas secretes, what it secretes? Insulin. So pancreas will secrete insulin. For example, this is the insulin. This insulin will also go into the bloodstream. Okay, now this insulin, it helps this glucose to enter into the cells. Okay, so these are the cells. For example, these are the muscle cells. I will give the example. This is a muscle cell. Okay, I will write one cell like here. So there is one transporter here, which is called as the GLUT transporter. GLUT transporter, and there are receptors which are called as the insulin receptors. So this is the insulin receptor. Okay, now what will happen, that glucose is present in the blood. Okay, insulin is present in the blood, which is secreted by the pancreas. Okay, both the things are present in the blood. Now this glucose has to enter into the cell. It will not directly enter into the cell. It can't directly enter into the cell. Why it can't enter into the cell? First, this insulin which is present here, this is the insulin. This insulin will act on the insulin receptor. Okay, so this is the insulin, it acts on the insulin receptor. When it acts on the insulin receptor, this GLUT transport opens, and it transports and it takes this glucose inside. So then this glucose goes inside the cells. So this is the normal functioning in the body. Okay, increase in the blood sugar level. Whenever there is increase in the blood sugar level, what will happen? Yeah, insulin will be synthesized by the pancreas. Okay, then this insulin gets into the bloodstream. This insulin then acts on the cells. The cells contain the insulin receptors. When this insulin acts on the cells, only then the glucose will be taken inside the cell. It happens in the normal conditions. Now you might have heard about the diabetes mellitus. Okay, type 1st, type 2nd. I will try to explain it here. It's not related, but still, diabetes mellitus. So it is of two types. One is type 1st, one is type 2nd. Okay, so again I will draw the blood stream here. Blood vessel here. So this is the blood vessel. Okay, and from stomach, and this is the pancreas. Okay, from stomach food comes here. This is the glucose, for example. Okay, and pancreas will secrete insulin. Pancreas generally has to secrete insulin. This insulin will go into the cells. But what happens in the type 1st diabetes? In type 1st, in the type 1st, what happens, that this insulin is not able to go into the bloodstream. Means this pancreas is not able to produce the insulin. We can say that this pancreas, it's not able to produce the insulin. So insulin won't be produced here. If insulin is not produced, so this sugar level will keep on increasing. This is called as the type 1st diabetes. Okay, type 1st diabetes mellitus. What happens in the type 2nd diabetes mellitus? Same. I will take here, this is the bloodstream. Okay, this is the pancreas. Okay, pancreas here produces the insulin. This is the insulin. Here there is presence of glucose. Now we have the cells. This is the cell. Now this insulin has to act here. Okay, insulin has to act on this cell Okay, this is the cell. This cell has the insulin receptor, but here what happens that this insulin is not able to act on the insulin receptor. So this type of diabetes is called as the type 2 diabetes mellitus. So this is the difference between the type 1 and the type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay, so this was not our topic. Our topic is homeostasis. This I explained it because of the example increase in the blood sugar levels. Okay, now we have two mechanisms, two control systems, we can say that. One is negative feedback and second is positive feedback. We can say that first one, it is negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism, and second one we have the positive feedback mechanism. So these are the two types of feedbacks in the homeostatic systems, negative and positive, and each type of feedback promotes a change in the homeostatic system, we can say, related to the set point, but they each do this differently. Negative does it differently and positive does it differently. Okay, so I will start with the negative feedback mechanism. Okay, so it causes a change in opposite direction, causes change in opposite direction. So basic homeostatic mechanism we have studied here. Now we have the positive and the negative. Okay, so negative feedback mechanism, what happens, it causes change in the opposite direction as the original change, as original change in system. So that is the definition of the negative feedback system. For example, your body your body tries to maintain a homeostatic temperature, okay, by adjusting opposite to the changes going on with your body's temperature. For example, as you heat up while on a run, for example, you are running, your body will heat up. Okay, so your body tries to cool itself by sweating. Okay, so your body will try to cool itself by the sweating. Okay, if you cool down because it is a cold outside, your body tries to warm up by shivering. Okay, so this is the example. For example, if you are running, what happens during the running? Okay, when you are running, what happens during the running? Your body when you are run, your body will heat up. So when you heat up, body will try to body will try to cool by sweating, cool by sweating. Okay, and if you cool down because it is cold outside, for example, it is cold outside, you are going outside, it's cold. Okay, you are cooling down. Okay, your body will try to warm up by shivering. Okay, so negative feedback, it is generally most obvious type of the homeostatic feedback which occurs in our body. Okay, and most examples you have come across these. For example, I will give you an example. Okay, negative feedback system, I will give you the example. Now, for example, there is the presence in case of the negative feedback system. Okay, for example, I will give the same example, decrease in the body temperature. For example, there is decrease in body temperature. Okay, decrease in the body temperature. When there is decrease in the body temperature, there will be stimulation of sensors. It will stimulate means positive. It will stimulate the sensor. Specialized temperature sensitive nerve endings. Okay, so the nerve endings will be stimulated. What they will send the information to the control center. So, and these are the group of cells present in the hypothalamus in case of temperature. Hypothalamus. Then this control center will send information to the effector. Okay, for example, effector here, for example, skeletal muscles, they will shiver. What I told you, decrease in the body temperature. I already give you the example here. If there is decrease in the body temperature, what will happen? There will be shivering. Okay, so effector, your skeletal muscles will shiver. Okay, or blood vessels in the skin, they will narrow. Blood vessels, they will narrow. and warm blood kept in the bone core, and there can be behavioral change also, okay, like putting on the clothes or curling up, okay. And what effector, what will happen then? There will be increase in the body temperature, okay. So if there was decrease in the body temperature, body will try to increase the body temperature. So that is called as a negative feedback system. So your original thing was decrease and your final thing is increase, that means opposite, okay. So that is what I wrote here in the definition, change in opposite direction. So if anything is increasing, body will try to decrease it. If anything is decreasing, body will try to increase it. So that is called as the negative feedback system. So here your body temperature was decreasing, okay, there was decrease in the body temperature, okay, and then this information was sent to the sensors, okay, you can say the receptor, okay, and this receptor sends the information to the control center, which is hypothalamus. Control sends the information to the effector, for example, skeletal muscles to shiver, blood vessels to narrow, and this will cause the increase in the body temperature, okay. So this is how body temperature increases, okay. Now if there is increase in the body temperature, what will happen? Increase in the body temperature, then there will be inhibition. So if there is increase in the body temperature now, so what will happen? There will be inhibition. I will write negative. Inhibition of the sensor. Then it will send information to control center, then to the effector, then there will be decrease in the body temperature. So this is the example of the negative feedback system, okay. Now we have the second type of the feedback system, which is called as the positive feedback system. Positive feedback system, okay. So positive feedback system, it causes change in the same direction. Change in same direction. If anything increases, body will also try to increase it. If anything decreases, body will also try to decrease it. So that is called as the positive feedback system. For example, okay, during childbirth, I will give example during the childbirth, okay. So during childbirth, the female body, it tries to maintain the homeostasis during childbirth by adjusting in the same direction. For example, as the change the pushing birthing baby is causing, okay. For example, you were okay. So female's cervix, it's trying to open because the child has to come outside. So the cervix of the female will try to relax, okay, and this continues until the child is born. So your body will release hormones, oxytocin, which will further try to increase this area of the cervix, so that the baby can come down, okay. And there is decrease in pressure on the uterus, which causes decrease in the contractions, okay. So there will be, during childbirth, there are increase in contractions because the child has to come outside, so your body will also try to increase those contractions. So that is an example of the positive feedback system, okay. So I can give you here the examples. For example, you have the effector here in this positive feedback system, okay. In positive feedback system, I give you the example. During labor, what happens? Contraction of the uterus, they are stimulated by the oxytocin, okay. So cervix, there are contractions. So these contractions are increased by body by releasing hormone called oxytocin. Okay. So oxytocin, and this force the baby's head into the uterine cervix, which stimulates the stretch receptors. There are receptors which are called as the stretch receptors. So this oxytocin, this will act on the oxytocin, the hormone which was produced by the body, it acts on the stretch receptors. So stretch receptors there, and more oxytocin is released, and further there will be more contractions, and the labor will increase, okay. And after the baby is born, then the stimulus, which means the stretching of the cervix, this is no longer present, and so the release of the oxytocin stops, okay. So until the baby is born, stretching will happen because of the oxytocin. Baby is born, then oxytocin will go back, because there is no stimulation then there is no contraction then there. So this is called as the negative feedback system. So that was the difference between the positive and the negative feedback system. Okay, in negative feedback system, if one thing increases, the other thing will decrease. If one thing decreases, the other thing will increase. While in case of the negative feedback system, here I have given the example. If one thing increases, body will try to increase that. For example, contractions are increasing, so body will try to increase the contractions further during the labor by release of the oxytocin. That oxytocin acts on the stretch receptors and increases contractions, so that the baby is born. When the baby is born, then this oxytocin will go back because stimulation has been removed, so oxytocin will go back. So that was about the negative and the positive feedback system. Okay, so whenever there is homeostatic imbalance, okay, then the body's homeostatic mechanisms, they are highly efficient, they have the capacity to adapt to stress. Okay, so if there is change in a system, if the change in the system is excessive, especially if it happens rapidly, they may not be able to adopt. The system may shift outside the normal physiological range. This can lead to the disruption, or this can lead to the disease if it is not corrected. Okay, so if it is out of the capacity of the body, then the disease occurs. Okay, there can be a disruption, and that disruption causes a disease. Okay, that is how the diseases are caused. So if body is not able to maintain the changes which are in the external or the internal environment, so if there is disruption, okay, if it is against the capability of the body, then the diseases will occur. Okay, so if there are imbalances, those imbalances will cause imbalances. So these imbalances will cause diseases in the humans when there is imbalance in the feedback system. Okay, so that was about the positive and the negative feedback system. Okay, I can give another example of the negative feedback system. For example, there is increase, for example, there is decrease in the room temperature. Then what happens when there is decrease in the room temperature? The thermostat of your, for example, AC, for example, is there. Thermostat, it will sensor. Okay, it activates the sensor. Then there will be a control center, for example, boiler control unit. Then if there will be a boiler, then there will be increase in the room temperature. Same when there is decrease in the room temperature. When there is increase in the room temperature, the sensor of the AC will turn on and it will cool your room down. That's also the example of the negative feedback system. So that was about the positive and the negative feedback system, and this whole process is called as the homeostasis.